Good evening, everyone. Mary, you are
Sorry.
co-host tonight. Thank you so much. Happy to see all of you. I just have to disclose that I had written down a bunch of stray thoughts for this evening, and somehow it vanished into the void. So I'm just going to trust the Dharma tonight, see what emerges. So, like all of us, I don't know what will happen next. We share that living in the unknown. Yet living in the unknown doesn't necessarily mean that I should be concerned or worried or any of the states that would often cause some agitation, because I know that I can accommodate this moment. Why do I say that? Because this is where I find dukkha, stress, where I find the cause of it and where I find the end of it. It's right here. And what brings the end of it is just experiencing and choosing what I experience, choosing what's here. So tonight it's the uncertainty of not knowing what will unfold. And all I could ever do, really, is feel uncertain. I can imagine that this night will be an utter disaster. But even that, I can say, oh, that's imagining right now that the night will be. And I can do that. I can deal with the imagination. I could assume many, many things about you. You're going to be bored tonight, or you're going to be waiting with bated breath to see whether I crash and burn. And I could think that, and I could notice, okay, thinking that. I only thought that just was because I was looking for examples of how I could make myself a little crazy. But even that is just a thought. It's just an idea. And I can rely on the ever-present availability of just being aware and know, and this is maybe a theme for tonight, and know that there is only ever what is happening right now. And anything other than what I'm experiencing right now is in the realm of either past, imagined, future, imagined. So it's not real. So the Dharma says, the teachings are about embracing what's actually true, things as they are. And so we start tonight with the way things are, not our ideas of the way things are, but what's your immediate and direct experience. And in the service of what we do together, what I think so beautifully, we sit together. We allow ourselves to be alone and secluded together. In the service of that, we start by maybe dedicating our practice tonight as a peace offering. Because unless you don't have a pulse, you're stirred up by the world, by the things that are hard to bear. And it's so obvious that there is a lack of peace and a lack of the causes of peace. And even the most innocent attempts to find peace are just filled with suffering causing methodologies. So we may be stirred up. I've been stirred up. Go to bed sometimes stirred up. Wake up stirred up. But we also know, if we practice the Dharma, that peace is available in any moment. And so we make our own peace offering on Tuesday nights and hopefully anytime you practice. So I think in that spirit, I'd like to read, instead of at the end of the evening, I'd like to read at the beginning of the evening. And then I'll hit Madison's gong and we'll start sitting. This is from John O'Donohue, entitled For Peace. As the fever of day calms toward twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb. That our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along this holy mountain. So let this sitting tonight be our peace offering. Let your eyes close softly. Find a peaceful posture, shifting from side to side, front to back, till you find a center point. And let the sound of the gong guide you to this vital point that we call here and now. If your body wants to take a longer, more intentional breath, let it breathe deeply for a moment. And once you've let go, once you feel that out breath, then just let your body come to a gentle rest, a stillness. And delight in the ultimate fact that you are aware here. And if you are aware here, you've just stepped out of time. There's no past that we can find here. There's no future that we can find here. There's no present that we can even find here. There's just being aware. Let your body bathe in that ever-present ultimate fact of being aware. And then notice how effortlessly your sitting body is noticed in awareness. Notice how the shape or the form of your sitting body is felt like little points of sensation or stars flickering in a vast evening sky. Just free to be in that natural openness of being aware. Awareness being uncaused, just is. And then noticing how an aspect of awareness is this capacity to gather and sustain our attention to the feeling of sitting, how our attention can easily gather just to feel the sensations that are felt when our body breathes. How effortlessly this feeling of the body breathing is noticed when we are aware. We resolve to stay connected to this experience of the body breathing, stay connected to the sitting body, knowing that when attention harmonizes with this feeling of our body, that there is a calming, there's a stilling, there's an emptying of our usual preoccupations, there's a quieting. Not because we quieted our minds, not because we quieted our bodies, but because we were aware, because we received our sitting body. We anchored our attention to this living experience. Just this sitting body, just this breath, just this moment. We make no effort, no strain to quiet ourselves. We just let our body be, let our attention be present. As long as it lasts. Awareness supported by our body, supported by our breath. We also welcome sounds and moods and thoughts. We welcome the pleasant. We welcome the unpleasant. We welcome neither pleasant or unpleasant. We even welcome the reactive mind. Noticing how it comes and it goes. We choose what's here. Just this experience right now. Just this being aware. Just resting in this state of being. When you realize you've been daydreaming, lost in thought, fantasizing, reminiscing, whatever it is that your mind was absorbed in, it's natural not to worry. Just celebrate that moment of recognition of it's a signal that awareness has rearisen and shined through. Once you're aware, just feel the peace and ease that settles in when we're free of our preoccupation and in support of remaining anchored to this living, simple experience of being aware and sensing. We connect again with our bodies. That's all. Just this moment, just this body, just this breath, or whatever is predominant experience right now. We choose what's here. I'm often struck by that moment when our practice ends, the doing ends, and it's always that possibility of just delighting in the simple fact of being aware, no longer trying. And because in those moments of being aware, there's a little bit less of the idea of me, the idea of you, the idea of myself. There's what fills that void. The void that's left when an idea of ourself is no longer present. What fills that void is peace, quiet. And it just reminds me of that wonderful little sutra from the Mahayana tradition called the Avatamsaka. It says, having no view of self, one is always peaceful. And it turns out that, at least this is how it seems to me, that every moment where there is awareness, independent, regardless of what is being known, what I'm aware of, every moment of awareness is a moment free of a view of self. There's just objects being known. And then that moment of awareness, there's no so sorry. Just sounds being known, phone ringing being known. Let me put this on Do Not Disturb. But isn't it exciting to you that peace is so close at hand? Little drops of peace, drops of relief. And it literally is every single moment that we are mindful or aware. But that being aware is, as you all know, is unstable. Even though it's ever available, it's unstable because we are conditioned to want something else, to seek something else, to have that sense of peace associated with something else or some other time or some condition. That's why the Buddha was really clear that there are two kinds of happiness in general. There's the happiness that depends on conditions, and there's the happiness that is unconditioned. The happiness that depends on conditions, in getting what you want, getting rid of what you don't want, things turning out the way that you hope they will. That kind of happiness, as delicious as it is when we get it, it's actually what he called the happiness of dukkha. It's subsumed under the umbrella of completely unreliable, not very satisfying, because the pleasure, the relief that we wait for, the pleasure is short-lived, and the waiting itself, the dependence, makes us tense. And the happiness of the unconditioned happiness, that's what he suggests. If you want to be happy, aim for that highest happiness, which is peace, the peace that you are when you are awake. And if you aim for that, if you aim for this unconditional happiness, then all the other kinds of pleasures of the world are available, but you're not waiting for them. But it's so nice to know that that unconditional happiness, or that the highest happiness, peace, is so close at hand. So even when the world is not very peaceful. And if only all the beings in the world could recognize the sacred happiness that's without sorrow here and now. If only we could get war out of our hearts. If only we could cultivate the conditions. Funny, the paradox is that only those who tend to condition their mind to stay here tend to realize the unconditioned happiness. Or if only we could just stay here long enough. But the Buddha said, because our mindfulness is not so mature, it's unstable. In his conversation with the monk Maggia, he said there are basically 5 things that you need to do in the meantime as you train your attention to stay here, as you get used to an experience of reality free as it is momentarily from a view of myself, which it is in any moment of mindfulness. As you get used to that, just being yourself, not the idea of yourself, not the thought of yourself, just being yourself. In the meantime, to allow that maturing of this sense of mindfulness. As Maggia came to the Buddha with so much sincerity, had gone forth, but he was still tormented by many desires, sensual thoughts, malevolent thoughts, cruel thoughts. I love that the Buddha didn't exclude somebody because they could have malevolent thoughts, they have cruel thoughts. It's human, it's natural. Doesn't, as my grandmother, one of my parents or somebody used to say, doesn't make them a bad person. All of us are conditioned. But he was tormented by these thoughts, and they created a lot of disturbance in his mind, Maggia. And he wanted to calm that restlessness, that unease that comes from having a mind that is filled with desire and ill will and cruelty. And so Buddha said, number 1, keep good company. Hang around people who don't stir up the unwholesome, the things that feed stress. Having honorable friends. People you don't have to be self-conscious around. You can feel safe with. Beings who share the value of being awake, of being kind. And then, speaking of being kind, great kindness of cultivating, as I've been on this theme every week because it's central to the Noble Eightfold Path, is cultivating virtue, wise, good, healthy conduct, being careful, being gentle in our speech, truthful for people's benefit, friendly, telling the truth. I said that already. Respectful of people's bodies and property. Not careless, not heedless. Means not clouding our perception with intoxicants, just really creating that foundation of harmlessness and giving each other, whoever is around you, the blessing of being safe with you. No better blessing than somebody saying, I don't have to be afraid of this person. They just radiate safety and kindness, care with their body, their speech, and their mind. Developing humility, and I think the Buddha described it as speech that is effacing. Not being puffed up, not being full of yourself. That creates that foundation of being able to just be yourself, not the idea of yourself, but that quiet presence that you are when you're not caught up in your idea of yourself. What a relief to others. Such a relief. So let's see, what were the other two? I actually made a list of Magia's. Oh, just cultivating the energy that inclines your mind to stay awake and practice. Really cultivating what's called virya, that determination to be awake. And practicing every day. I don't know how many of you have stayed with the 100-day retreat idea, 3 times a day, 3. Thank you, Jill. Glad to hear that. Resolutions, practicing 3 quickies or longies every day. I got very inspired this week listening to NPR. There was a fellow who had been, up until very recently, as an adult, had been illiterate. And he was one of those TikTok followers, and TikTok has a program, maybe some of you know about this, called Book Talk. And it's all about reading. And he made a resolution that in 1 year, not only would he learn to read, but he would read 100 books. And he succeeded. And he talked about how difficult it is. It's not so much the reading part, not so much the comprehension part, but it's staying with the commitment to read every day, 100 books, to just stay with it. And it's just such a good thing to resolve to stay with it. So maybe include in part of your 100-day retreat, resolve to many times a day to just be aware and sense that there is, in that moment of awareness, that there's no view of self, no view of me, my, mine. It's just being aware of whatever is entering the field of the senses. So there's only 6 things. There's seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and there may be awareness of thinking. That is the all. That's all there is. That's where you find a peaceful world. That's where we make our peace offering, is by staying here a little bit more. So then I think the last one, after arousing the energy of this practice, sustaining it, the last recommendation that the Buddha made to Maggia to help to support the maturing of the continuity of mindfulness was cultivating, let's see, how do I put this? Penetrative wisdom, or to look deeply at the nature of what he described in that sutta as the rising and passing. To notice how everything that arises passes away. And in the teachings, the only thing that distinguishes a Buddha, one who's awake and one who's not awake, is the Buddha knows that whatever arises passes away, and they are informed every day, moment by moment, by that understanding that whatever comes goes. So pleasure that arises and fades doesn't stir the heart. Pain doesn't. It's understood that the pleasure is by its nature fleeting, and we don't cling to it. And that the things that are painful, they are also of the nature to change, and so they don't stir the heart in fear and reactivity. As one knows deeply and penetrates that understanding of arising and passing. And the one who cultivates this penetrating wisdom is immersed in the understanding that there is, if you are born in this world, there are things that are stressful, and what turns that stress into mental suffering, more stress, more rumination, is our reaction to that basic suffering, the not liking it, thinking there's something wrong. And so it is the compounding stress from our reactivity that turns the essential difficulties into suffering, and that part's really optional. And there's an end to it if we cultivate this sense of moment-to-moment peace, the peace of being aware. And by cultivating the peace of being aware, cultivating non-harming, cultivating loving kindness, we cultivate the path, the fourth noble truth. And the beauty of that is we make it out of our own life. We don't have to become something that we're not. We just, right where we're sitting, right where we're living, it's portable. So how did I get on this trip anyway? Oh, the sitting. I think it was the Rumi poem that was floating through my mind in between the moments of peace, and the Rumi poem that says, failure is the key to the divinity within. Your prayer should be, break the legs of what I want to happen. Humiliate my desire. Eat me like candy. It's spring, and finally I have no will. So that the exhaustion that comes from continually going out in search for peace when it's waiting quietly, resting quietly at home, right where you're sitting, right in front of your own fireplace, and just failing to find a reliable sense of relief in that getting caught in what you want. Failure is the key. And it's slightly tongue-in-cheek, so even though it's kind of serious, break the legs of what I want to happen. He doesn't mess around. But finally, I have no will. You'd never think in our ordinary consciousness that having no will would be a secret teaching. But try it right now. Don't will this, don't will that. See what happens when your mind is absent of will, absent of searching. Whereas one of my teachers said, call off the search. This secret, it's a secret teaching. It's an open secret, but it's secret. Only because we're just taught to look elsewhere. How sad, Hakuin Zenji says. I always come back to this. How sad we ignore the near and search for truth afar. Those who turn about and bear witness to nature that is no nature. Let's go far beyond any doctrine, any teaching. How boundless and free is the sky of awareness. How sweet the full moon of wisdom. Truly, he says, is anything missing now? This very room, this very Zoom room is the lotus land. This very body is the Buddha. That's why intuitively when we hear the poem from Donald Babcock from 1937 entitled The Little Duck. Do I have the little duck with me? One moment. Don't go away. Life is good to me tonight. Now we're ready to look at something pretty special. It's a duck riding the ocean 100 feet beyond the surf. No, it isn't a gull. A gull always has a raucous touch about him. This is some sort of duck. And he cuddles in the swells. He isn't cold, and he's thinking things over. There's a big heaving in the Atlantic, and he's part of it. He looks a bit like a mandarin, or the Lord Buddha meditating under the Bodhi tree. But he has hardly enough above the eyes to be a philosopher. He has poise, however, which is what philosophers must have. He can rest while the Atlantic heaves, because he rests in the Atlantic. Probably he doesn't know how large the ocean is, and neither do you, but he realizes it. And what does he do, I ask you? He sits down in it. He reposes in the immediate as if it were infinity, which it is. He has made himself part of the boundless by easing himself into it, just where it touches him. I like the duck. He doesn't know much, but if only I could listen, he teaches me all I need to know. Somebody messed with that translation. That was not the way I originally read it, but I think you get the point. That every moment that we are aware, we ease ourselves into the boundless, right where it touches us. We repose in the immediate as if it were infinity, which it is. We like that little duck. He may not have much, but he has religion. Any questions, comments, descriptions tonight about your practice or anything happening in your life? Let me just get rid of this. Feel free to use the raised hand function. Well, a positive way of viewing this is that your minds have been stolen, which is good. It dawned, I remembered in the quiet that not only did I have Rumi's poem about failure and about having no will, I also was writing a sequel to my original book called Invitation to Meditation. It's now been out for 6 years, but my part 2 that's been percolating, and I think what inspired tonight was a whole book. It may never be written, but I'm just telling you what was visiting during the sitting. Was the part 2 is about calming our restless mind. And because there are the world beings, almost everybody I meet, they're stirred up. There's an unease. There's a restlessness. There's an agitation. There's a worry. And our minds tend to be tormented. There tends to be so much anxiety. And there's so much in the Buddha's teaching about how to calm that restless mind. And of course, at the heart of it is, it's easy to say, just stay where you are. But just a few little pieces of the teaching. One of the things that stirs our heart is waiting to be happy. Is what seems like the most innocent thing, most human thing, looking forward. But when looking forward becomes the dominant force in our mind, our body freezes, is put in a state of suspended suspended happiness. And then we end up not quite breathing easily, enjoying the unfolding present. We wait. We're waiting for that future vacation or purchase or love. And then we're somehow increasingly unsettled, dissatisfied. So that's the conditioned happiness. But the main anchor that calls us back is to just have a regular body awareness, first foundation of mindfulness. Not just about being mindful, it's about being mindful and embodied. Because when mind and body come together, there's harmony. Peace comes. Keith, please feel free.
So maybe just taking the theme coming up on my mind with this theme a step beyond, which is in those moments when you do get caught up, you haven't watched something develop, but all of a sudden you're feeling absolutely stuck and really stirred up because I don't know, you feel like there's a deadline approaching, or you feel like something has to be done, or you feel like it should be done this way, which obviously then there becomes this very strong set of emotions. How how in those times do you start to pull yourself back?
If you've noticed those, whatever you're experiencing, you've already pulled yourself back. Then it's a matter of accommodating that feeling, being a little less involved at that moment in the content and more in the feeling of being flooded or overwhelmed, stressed. If you really try that and you let for as much as possible a sustained period, if you could let the sense of being aware mingle or mix with that feeling of being stressed, the stress has no chance. It has no chance in an environment that is kind, non-interfering, non-contentious, doesn't want anything, because mindfulness has no agenda other than to say, yes, this is what's here right now. Because that's the heart of this, is that it's the truth that liberates our hearts, not our effort to get someplace. And so, of course, we get caught in the effort to get someplace. And when we're caught in it, there's nothing you can do until mindfulness rises up to say, whoa, I'm really caught in a state of suspended happiness. And what's that like? That's all. So it's easy to talk about it. It's another to both resolve and then to practice, really getting to know and metabolize things that are quite uncomfortable, like overwhelm, restlessness, agitation, all those things. Sometimes we're not able to go right into the middle of it, though. We have to start first with just sensing what's happening in our environment, something that's not so difficult to be with in the present environment, and just so that we know that it's not everything. And then we say, oh, that sight is nice, or this feeling of my hand touching my leg is nice. Breathing is nice. And then there's also the residue of that state that I have to somehow feel. And if you do a little back and forth or just include other things, usually things settle down pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Trust awareness. Maureen, please.
I was very, very enthusiastic for about 2 weeks of the 100-day challenge. And then one night I wrote I don't feel like doing this anymore. I mean, I just had that thought and I put it in my journal, and I have just like lost my interest. And I think that this is trying. The whole idea of getting somewhere and having to do it. When I reflect on my time since I made that statement, I realize that I have been pausing. I have been noticing what's going on. I'm feeling the resistance, so it's just that I have an expectation of that first wonderful enthusiasm and good feelings I had for that
Yes.
first 10 days. And, now it's a little bit more confronting a lot of things that I'd rather not confront.
Thank you.
I don't know if there's a question behind that.
No, I love that you're just speaking to the challenge of sustaining that.
Yes.
Of course, if you could get the goal, whatever goal or expectation out of it, and just put in your time, let whatever goal be a byproduct as opposed to
just be in that swell, be with it.
Be with it. And
Not
we don't catch those thoughts very quickly, those ones that are filled with resistance or doubt, and so I think now you've identified maybe a theme that may stop you. I don't feel like it, or I forgot what your actual thought was.
Yeah, I just lost interest.
Lost interest. So was there boredom, or was there? Or
No, I think it was just a sense of, well, just I lost touch with it. I just sort of disconnected, which is something I do.
Do you feel like you can reconnect?
Yes, but I can't make myself reconnect. Patience.
You say you can't make yourself reconnect?
No, it's not something that I can just will to happen. I don't quite understand all this, but I'm realizing that there's this trying or efforting. There's right effort, and then there's the kind of driven effort. And there's expectations and so on that get in the way, and sort of trying to find a navigation where you're not just dropping into the hole because it's not working the way you think it should.
So maybe part of your resolutions, remember we included some resolutions?
Yes.
Maybe one of your resolutions may have to morph into finding what wise effort is. May I resolve to have relaxed, joyful effort that is that it's not too caught up in gaining, but more just in savoring, enjoying, appreciating, something like that.
Thank you.
Anyway, I love that you've even experimented, and 10 days to me is a lot. But the beauty of this moment right now is we can always begin again. Past has passed, future's just an idea. There's just this.
Thank you.
Anyway, thank you. Love hearing from you. Okay, I think unless there's any comment, question, description, we'll call it a night. Let's see if there's something. Oh, I think what I'll do, I'll end tonight with the poem that's attributed to Maggia, because I alluded to the Maggia Sutta. He said, little thoughts, subtle thoughts, when followed, stir up the heart. Not comprehending the thoughts of the heart, one runs here and there, the mind out of control. But comprehending the thoughts of the heart, One who is ardent, mindful, restrains them. When followed, they stir up the heart. One awakened lets them go without a trace. So let's all, at least for this moment, for tonight, let them all go without a trace. Let's all rest in natural great peace, this exhausted mind, as Noshoken Rinpoche says. This exhausted mind beaten helpless by karma and neurotic thought. Like the relentless fury of the pounding waves in the infinite ocean of samsara, rest in natural great peace. Rest, rest, rest. And may the restfulness of our own practice be dedicated to the welfare and benefit of this stirred up world, this restless, agitated, aggressive world. May all beings be liberated. And I'll just ask that you stick around for a few more minutes so Mary can share whatever the upcoming events or announcements.
Well, we do have an upcoming in-person full-day retreat at Fort Mason, and that is at the end of the month in February. More details forthcoming. I also just wanted to let you know, for those of you who can't make it sometimes onto the Zoom, that we are live streaming now on YouTube. And you can find an archive of talks on YouTube, and there's the listing, the link is, I put in the chat. So if you missed the talk, you can always just go to YouTube and watch. And then finally, just a reminder that we are in this beautiful field of generosity. And if you could do your part in terms of sort of helping support us financially, it's always greatly appreciated. I've put the means in the chat, and I want to thank you in advance for your kindness and your generosity.
Thanks, Mary.
Back to you.
Thank you for your generosity. Thanks for your practice. And please feel free to unmute and say good night to each other.